I'm Anton, here with my co-host Shelby, to discuss a variety of topics from across the sustainability universe. Shelby, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good. Yeah.
Tell me how you've been finding the spring so far.
Oh, it's been good.
Yeah?
Yeah, no issues. Like, I'm not one of those allergy people, so that's good.
That's good. I have been having allergy problems. Last week was like a hanky day.
Oh.
I had to carry my hanky around with me, and then people go, "Oh, you're really committed to that whole environmental vibe, aren't you?"
That's pretty cool, though. Respect for the hanky.
Thank you. But it wasn't super pleasant, and so
Okay.
I ended up doing a little research.
Yeah.
Because I just wanted to know. I'm relatively new to Ohio, been just under 2 years, wanted to see what was blooming, what am I allergic to, and so I did a little bit of research on what happens here, and I came across this thing called botanical sexism. Have you heard of this?
Oh, really? No, I mean, that sounds weird.
Yeah, it's when you dress trees up as boys because we prefer them to look like
Really?
that. No,
Okay, I
of course
figured
not. No, but actually there is a preference for male trees because so just like with any other creature, you've got male and female.
Yeah.
And the male parts of the tree is all the pollen, which is then supposed to go out and pollinate female trees, which would create fruit, and the whole cycle happens, right?
Yeah.
That's how plants work.
Right.
Theoretically, except that actually we prefer only male plants. We've kind of chosen male plants only or male plants mostly so that it doesn't produce fruit.
That sounds counterintuitive to me.
Yeah, exactly.
I would want my fruit.
You would want your fruit, except if you think about a long city street that's got beautiful trees and then it's dropping crab apples.
Give me a break.
I know. Well, there are people who don't like it, and we'll get more into this throughout the show, but there are people who don't like that, and so they've strategically planted just male trees, which means that pollen goes everywhere, and it kind of has nowhere to go.
Yeah.
And it's making it worse for people like me with these allergies.
Yeah, the female trees aren't taking in that pollen.
Exactly. I mean, this isn't at all a segment. I just kind of wanted to tell you about it because I'm feeling a little better, but it still frustrated me to no end to know that even my runny nose is the fault of something that we need to do about the environment.
Shelby, I'm going to go plant some female trees for you so that you don't have any more runny nose.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate everything you're willing to do for me.
100%. Well, we got a full docket today.
Yeah, we should get into it.
I wanted to kick off with a little bit on fracking. Mm-hmm. Not that we've never talked about fracking before.
That's true. I'm still kind of a newbie, though, so I can always go a little deeper.
Yeah. Well, I read an article by Inside Climate News recently about fracking in Pennsylvania and how researchers are now kind of saying we're kind of reaching a tipping point of where are we going to put all of this toxic radioactive waste that comes from the oil and gas industry.
Toxic radioactive waste.
So let me back up a little bit.
Yeah, please.
So fracking is a horrible process where you take fresh water, you mix it with a bunch of bad chemicals and radioactive isotopes, and you shoot it down into the earth at high pressures to get to oil.
Right, yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. Now, the oil and gas industry, instead of disposing of this properly, it's much cheaper for them to just give this to a municipality and say, hey, this is like a cheap de-icer. You can use it on your roadways. And so we're spreading radioactive waste on our roadways instead of disposing of this waste properly. And I want to just say there's really no great way to dispose of this waste.
I was gonna ask.
And I will get into that a little bit later, but are you with me so far on the radioactive waste?
Yeah, so far. Although I have to ask, you said that this output, this sort of toxic output, is then being sold to municipalities
Yes.
as a de-icer. Does it function that way? I mean, it's not being made for that purpose, right? We're just kind of repurposing.
We're repurposing, and even repurposing seems a little bit too nice.
A little generous,
a little generous,
Does it function like a salt does, like de-icing is supposed to?
Well, this radioactive oil and gas waste, the company will take the gunk out of it, and what you're left with is a still highly toxic, radioactive, but saline solution. It's still very salty.
So it does work, but
it does work kind of. It's cheaper than salt. It may be even cheaper than cinders, and so communities who don't have a lot of money, they're just going to opt for that. It's just the economical solution.
Yeah, it makes sense, but I think you're going to tell me that that's bad.
It's not good. This radioactivity, it's attaching to clays in our soil, and even our crops are going to pull this up through their root system. We might be eating corn that's been contaminated. This is going to run off into our watersheds, and people all over the U.S. have discussed how their livestock has been poisoned and they can't drink from certain streams or springs anymore because of this.
You just mentioned that, people all over the U.S. are saying this. Just to back up a little, when we talk about fracking, is this a U.S. industry? Does this happen around the world? Like, give me some context on that.
Yeah, fracking happens around the U.S., mainly through the Appalachian mountain range.
Got it.
Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia are three big frackers. We also see this in other places of the world, Canada, China, and Argentina as well.
Wow.
Those are the countries that will sell oil commercially, like worldwide, because of fracking. We don't really see a lot in the EU. Actually, we had some German journalists, documenters, they're creating a documentary, come to Buckeye Environmental Network to ask them and interview us during one of our trainings on teaching about fracking. And we tried to convince them fracking's not a great practice, but Germany is looking for ways to get off of Russian oil right now, to have their own energy independence.
I was going to say that makes sense given the political climate that we're living through, but it sounds like Buckeye Environmental Network tried to steer them away from that as an option.
We tried to steer them in the right direction.
Okay, that's good. Glad that you're there. Glad that you, the Buckeye, Ohio-based Environmental Network, are implementing policies in Germany.
Yes.
Really glad to hear that.
Well, we're doing our best. I feel like we have a good moral compass, so...
Yeah, I like to hear it.
So I wanted to maybe circle back to the article. A lot of this radioactive oil and gas waste, it's actually being shipped to Ohio to be disposed of. And the reason why that is because Pennsylvania's injection well program, injection wells is where they shoot this radioactive waste into the bedrock.
Thank you for clarifying.
Of the earth. They actually ship it to Ohio because it's much easier to go through Ohio's program than through Pennsylvania's program. And that's because Pennsylvania is under the national EPA, whereas Ohio EPA is the one that regulates all of our injection well program.
So we as a state are more lenient.
We're much more lenient.
Got it.
Definitely to a fault. We have injection wells all over, and dozens are being permitted each year. So we're just up in the ante every year.
Yeah, I mean, we just talked about this, that there's like a new bill that allows this to happen on public lands all over the place, right?
For fracking, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the more fracking we see, that waste has to go somewhere. And what's going to happen is it's either going to end up on our roadways or it's going to be injected deep down into the earth, which also has its problems. As I said, there's no really great way to dispose of this radioactive waste. That chemical solution is going to not only cause like earthquakes, but it's going to cause springs where literally you're just going to have toxic radioactive oil and gas waste shooting up out of your lawn. I know I have a friend, Lauren, who literally has a spring coming up in her garden because she lives 1,000 feet away from an injection well.
Oh, that's terrible news.
Yeah.
So what can the average person do about this? This feels like so out of reach, but we've found out before that there are things we can do.
Well, the best thing, and what I will always advocate for, is get more information about this. Buckeye Environmental Network's website has a webinar that we actually facilitated that has physicians, former first responders, educators, PhD soil scientists, the run-of-the-mill, actually talking about the harms of this brine spreading. And this is a very niche issue. Like, not a lot of state legislators really know about this or know about it in detail. Not a lot of residents know about this. So this is something that we have to continue the conversation on. And also, we have to be able to organize as communities, educating our environmentally minded neighbors, saying, hey, this is bad stuff being spread on the roadways. We have to come up with alternatives and open a dialogue with our township trustees and our county commissioners. Because if the state legislature is not going to do anything, then we have to make sure that our local government is setting the tone.
Yeah, well, you said the thing that we can do is educate, so thanks so much for educating me.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, because I didn't really know that much about this. I certainly
It's
didn't
such a
know.
niche issue, you know?
Yeah, you hear fracking, you kind of have a general idea of what that means, but really all these outputs and what that means for people, that was news to me, so thanks.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, that is going to segue us into our next segment, which I
Yeah.
think is also about organizing, but in a much cuter way.
Love it.
So this is a super local story for us Northeast Ohioans, and it's from our local paper / news source, cleveland.com, and the Plain Dealer. Whoop whoop for Cleveland. So this story comes to us from an elementary school, the Onaway School in Shaker Heights, which is an inner ring suburb around the city of Cleveland. 3rd and 4th grade students from this elementary school protested last week.
Wow, good for them.
I'm so excited about it.
Thank you, 4th graders and 3rd graders.
See, I told you it was cute, right?
It's cute.
They were protesting because their school has a pollinator garden.
Yeah.
So it's growing all sorts of things that we generally call weeds, like milkweed, for example, but all sorts of things, kind of like what we talked about a few episodes ago in like growing pollinator gardens and how important that is, right? You talked all about this.
Yeah, it's important.
It's so important, and the students are assigned a local bird, butterfly, or moth that they get to adopt.
Aww.
And they like go out in their pollinator garden and they look for it and they track its life cycle. It's this really cool hands-on learning opportunity for students, and it's good for the environment. I mean, you talked about the importance of native plants that work better with our environment and attract. I mean, pollinators in the first place are a great thing to have. So all of this sounds great, right? Can you think of any reason anybody might not want this?
I mean, some people don't like the looks of native plants, and what I would say to them is go take a walk. So.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening. Shaker Heights is a community that has, I shouldn't say all people in the community. Some people in the community are saying, we don't like the look of this garden, you need to move it. And so the community has planned to move this pollinator garden elsewhere so that it can't be seen kind of from the outside. But the students said, heck no, those are our butterflies.
Yeah.
Those are our native
Good for
plants.
them.
Good for them, right? And so, yeah, they staged a protest together. They said, this is NIMBYism. I don't think we've talked about that yet on the podcast, but I think you know what I mean when I say that.
I do.
Yeah, NIMBYism, NIMBY stands for not in my backyard.
Yeah.
It's this idea that like, oh yeah, I want good things for the world, just not in my backyard.
Right. I don't want these native pollinator gardens by the school.
I don't want to have to look at that when I'm on my run in the morning or, so someone you might ask would say, I want that in general. I believe that pollinators are good. Just don't want them there where they're in my face.
Yeah.
That's a terrible way for us to approach issues,
Yeah,
right?
100%.
Like if we believe in something, then we should believe in it where we live too. And so I think about this, I thought about this when I got a newsletter from my local township. I don't live in the city of Cleveland, but I got this newsletter this same week that these protests are happening in Shaker Heights that told me in my township it's illegal for me to grow these types of plants. They're native. They grow on their own, just to be clear. But I can't keep them. So if dandelions and milkweed were to pop up in my hypothetical garden, I would have to remove them, or else I would be breaking township rules.
Just break the rules, Shelby.
Well, I don't have a garden just yet because I live in a tiny apartment, but it struck me that 3rd and 4th graders recognize the importance of these plants and then the creatures that they bring to our community and learning and embracing Ohio as it naturally is.
Yes.
And that my township is saying, well, we just don't think that has a lot of curb appeal, so we're not going to do that. It's
just so wild to me. I mean, I don't know. I understand that certain communities are more buttoned up, if you will.
Sure.
But can you not appreciate the nature and the ecosystem that's going on? There's some of these cool moths and butterflies that you won't get anywhere else if you don't plant these host plants, These are exclusively going to cling on to certain plants like milkweed and others. Yeah.
I remember when I first moved to Cleveland, I actually went for a walk over in a different inner ring neighborhood and passed a pollinator garden, not this one, but just one in somebody's backyard. And I remember thinking, oh, I'm totally going to be at home here. I had just gotten to Cleveland. I didn't really know what to expect. And when I saw that, I thought, oh, this is a city, this is a community that really cares about the environment. So I'm so heartened to see that these young young people. I mean, young, tiny
Yeah.
people. Third and fourth graders are like 7, 8, 9 years old.
Yeah.
But they organize. You as a community organizer must be so proud.
I am so proud. I would love to meet like these kids and tell them a good job, and yeah.
Yeah.
I just think that's the bomb.
Well, we salute you, the students of Onaway School in Shaker Heights, and think you're doing a great job. I'm ready for our next segment if you are.
Yeah, 100%. So, Shelby, in your walks around Cleveland, have you noticed any fun smells around the city?
All sorts of them.
All sorts of things?
Sometimes fun, sometimes surprising, sometimes unpleasant, but always there, always something.
Yeah. Last week I made you smell the horrible smell of the calorie pear, the blossoms.
Think that there's still blossoms up my nose, to be totally honest.
It smells horrible. Well, some of these smells that I'm going to talk about today are actually worse than the calorie pear.
Oh, no.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the Smell MyCity app.
The Smell MyCity.
Smell MyCity app.
Application for your phone.
Yes, for your phone.
Great.
Something you download. This app is actually developed by Carnegie Mellon, and they developed it because of air pollution in urban areas. And so people can report what they smell, like whether it's like a sulfur smell or like a chlorine smell or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And they can say, do you have any symptoms like runny nose, sore throat, coughing when you go by this certain area in your neighborhood? And it actually will crowdsource this data, and researchers will be able to look at it and say, wow, the air pollution here is really not good. And that's going to teach us a lot about more about the city, about the toxic chemicals that you're exposed to.
Have you used it yet? Have you used the app?
I have. So I live like 4 blocks from a PPG, which is like a paint facility kind of, a company that makes paint. And I actually reported them because pretty much any time of day that I drive by that or bike by it, I smell nail polish. And I actually asked somebody with a chemistry degree, like, what is this likely a product of? Like, what are these smells coming from?
What did you find out?
It was methyl ethyl codone, which is like a highly cancerous, toxic chemical. And if you're smelling toxins, you're breathing in toxins. So I'm a little bit actually concerned about, living very close to this facility. Like, am I increasing my risk for cancer? I think probably.
So you reported it in the Smell MyCity app.
Yeah.
What was that experience like? Like, what happens for you as a user after you've reported it?
You can see it on the map. It comes up in like a little red triangle, like, oh, somebody reported something here. And every time that you smell these smells, you can report it. So it's like, how often is this happening? Every day? For me, every time I walk by it, if I wanted to report it, I could just report it. And eventually that data could be used by, I guess, the researchers at Carnegie Mellon, and hopefully by the residents of the community to dialogue with council people or with the mayor and say, hey, like, this facility is kind of like killing us over here. Like, is there anything we can do to like maybe reduce the emissions or work with the company?
Yeah, can you see what other people have reported? So if you reported it and then I reported it, could I see like somebody else in my community has also experienced this?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So that's the great thing. You can really just go around and see what other people in their neighborhoods have reported. I haven't seen a lot pop up in Cleveland just yet. This originated in Pittsburgh, so I hope we're not too far off from this getting normalized in Cleveland. But I always love the idea of crowdsourcing this data. It really will help a community come together and organize around making sure that their health is intact and we're not getting poisoned by our companies.
Yeah, I love this idea. I'm definitely going to download the app because I'm all about crowdsourcing data sharing. But I'm also curious about ways that we can use it. Well, I should say first that I'm so glad that you shared it because you just said we want to get more of this in our city. But yeah, you mentioned being able to use it for advocacy. Yeah. And so I want to know how we get to access the data, and then how can we use that to organize internally within our neighborhoods and put together campaigns about pushing back on industry.
That's actually an excellent question. I haven't really gone too far into it. I would love to follow up with you in another show or put it in the show notes.
Totally.
Getting in touch with Carnegie Mellon and getting some of this data and saying maybe even they have some ideas about how to use this for advocacy since
Yeah.
they're the ones that developed it. I just wanted to plug really quick. Some smells that you might smell in your community may include like a plasticky smell, like if you play your music too loud and then your speakers like blow out, like that smell.
Yes,
Those
that's
could be
such a good description. I know exactly what
Yeah,
you're talking
right?
about.
I mean, I've done it many times, unfortunately, blown out my speakers. But you're smelling toxic VOCs if that's the case.
VOCs are
volatile organic compounds.
Great,
And
great.
Another thing is chlorine, just like breaking up things that make plastic. So a lot of people during East Palestine, they smelled like a sweet chlorine smell. That's because of the, I forget what it's called, the stuff that makes PVC.
We can put it in the show
Yeah,
notes.
we'll put it in the show notes. Also, watch out for sulfur or like a nail polish smell, which is what I smell over at PPG near my neighborhood. And then lastly, just also make sure that you're checking for like runny nose, runny eyes, sore throat, coughing, and report that stuff. I think there's a real chance that we can make some progress in our communities if we have it documented.
I love that. Listen, today we've talked a lot about different ways that communities are organizing, about
Yeah.
different issues, really serious things,
Yeah.
talking about education, talking about tiny children
Yes.
coming together to organize.
Good
This is
for
just,
them.
just one more way
Yeah.
for us to gather data and community input and say the environment's important to us.
Yeah, 100%. Shelby, thank you so much for discussing all things green with me. How about you let our viewers know how they can stay in touch with us?
Absolutely. If you'd like to stay connected to us, please be sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at One Planet Media. That's ONE1. And if you'd like to rewatch full episodes, check out our YouTube channel, The All Things Green Show. You can also check out all of our sources from today's episode in the show notes.
We'll be back at the same time next week to bring you more news. Thank you so much for being a part of the global sustainability movement.